Benchwarmers, we're back this week with our weekly fantasy episode. Thank you to everyone who's been tuning in. A big thank you to all the followers and fellow Benchwarmers that have been following our fantasy series this season. This is the episode for Gameweek 10, your preview. And joining me for this episode on fantasy, we got Erik, the instigator, and Marco Cruz, the interrupter. If you're watching this video, you may or may not see some weird representatives that are filling in for LeSmug, who was with us earlier. But we're going to get into Game Week 10, the review of Game Week 9, and some of your favorite questions, some notes, your captaincy picks. We're going to go over all of that. And we usually do remind you where you can find us and where you can watch this video. I'll switch it up a bit. Erik, where can they see our footage?
You can watch all our footage on Benchwarmers FC TV.
And Marco, where can they find us on socials?
You can find us on YouTube. Wow. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter by searching Benchwarmers FC.
The one. You can also email us, benched@benchwarmersfc.com. We appreciate all of you guys. We recently hit a nice milestone with 500 followers, and we hope to keep growing. Without further ado, though, we're going to get right into the Benchwarmers Club, as we usually do at the beginning of every fantasy Premier League episode. We let you know which of the top 6 clubs had a benchwarmer join our famous Benchwarmers Club. And at the end of the season, we're going to see who is the greatest benchwarmer of them all. Manchester City left Aguero on the bench for 90 minutes. Yes, he has been going through some fitness issues, but still, to choose Gabriel Jesus over Aguero has been mind-boggling to some. So he makes the bench for Manchester City. For Liverpool, even though they have to make use of all of their subs, we had to put Tsimikas on there. He did make a nice little, cameo for them. And today, as of recording, for the Champions League tie, but Tsimikas has been put on the Benchwarmers Club list for Liverpool. Arsenal, Lacazette was sat on the bench for the full 90 minutes. This is something that to some people, to some fans, may have been a bit of a relief. Fantasy-wise, though, it looks like what most people were asking for, because leaving Aubameyang up there by himself to do most of the duties in the attack is what a lot of them are planning to ask for. For Chelsea, Jorginho, after featuring for the side, I know Marco was one of the few people that had Jorginho in the beginning of the season because he was on penalties. My man sat warming up that bench for the full 90 minutes for their match against Newcastle. For United, they had Dan James sitting on the bench, who didn't make an appearance. He did feature in midweek for their Champions League game as of recording today, but for the weekend, he did not come on against West Brom. And for Tottenham to round out the top 6, Gareth Bale was left as an unused tool in the Tottenham Hotspur bench. So that makes your top 6 Benchwarmers Club for Game Week 9. Moving into the watch list, and before we get into the names, I'm going to ask you guys, how'd you do this past weekend for Game Week 9? Erik?
I actually had a really solid game week, man. I'm happy. I placed above average. I had 76 points.
Nice.
I've been moving up on the table. So I'm coming up, man. I'm doing some strategic planning, which I'm going to ask you later in this episode. So I'm going to see what your thoughts are on that.
Nice. It got messy. Let's party. How'd you do?
Below average.
Dang, he's laughing.
I mean, look, my answer's only going to be one thing. It is that I consistently control it. That's perfectly fine.
Listen, man, you asked me to take it seriously this year. I'm taking it seriously.
Good, bro. I'm glad that you are, and kudos to you, because I'm happy that you, by this time last year, you're like, oh shit, I forgot again. Oh shit, I forgot. This year, you're actually paying attention to it. You're actually trying, even though you're not like in the top 5. You're trying. Yeah. I give you kudos for that.
That was a quick little back slap just to make sure.
No. just a small reminder.
All right, let me just scroll down to find you, Marco.
Bro.
Scroll. My screen isn't big enough yet.
It's not. No, you have to get the 12 for that one, bro. and still with the 12, you still have to go 1, and they find him. But nah, man, I'm below average. That's basically it. I'm fucked so far.
That's a cool mug.
Yeah, I managed to find the Premier League Mornings mug that I usually use for the games in the weekend. I thought it would be fitting for this fantasy episode. My pointage, actually, I got a very lucky 69. I got 69 points. We all know that is the internet's favorite number. And I will say that even though it is above the average, which this past game week was 55 points, I was a little disappointed in some things. I did play my wild card for everyone asking from last episode. For everyone who heard last episode, I was debating it. I went ahead and hit the wild card. I didn't want to get caught out with Salah missing out. I wasn't sure if he was going to miss out again. He did feature again today midweek for Champions League, which is something that we should watch out for, and I'll make a note of that later on. But one of my regrets was I had McCarthy since game week 1, and the season I sold him, he scored a solid 7-pointer, even though they didn't get the clean sheet, which I think is phenomenal for McCarthy. But I did get Fernanderson, and I did get De Bruyne in, even though City hasn't been looking great. But we'll get to that. And I know he's here, and I'm not sure. I want to make sure if he's even in the in the league right now. But Edgar,
no, he's not.
Would you mind chiming in with your bobbleheads on what your views on fantasy are for this season?
Well, I'm on today just to let you know that Oreos is now sponsoring the Reds of Liverpool. So Merry Christmas, Oreo. Thank you for joining the squad. My fantasy team did great this weekend. It's loaded up with only Liverpool players, and it's my own personal fantasy league. So I always win. But that being the case, you would be dumb for not having Liverpool strikers or Liverpool midfielders on your game week this week, because they are playing Brighton 7:30 a.m. on Saturday. So no matter who's going to step on the field, whether it's Jota, Mane, Firmino, or Salah, you can more than likely expect a goal from one of them. So good luck.
All right, guys. So at least you have it on record. If that is not true, you can come back and you can absolutely sue Edgar for giving you false information. I do have my disclaimer, as you have heard previously, that any information that is offered, given, or suggested does not constitute as a reason for liability for any hits or damages that you take to your points total of your fantasy teams. The watch list, though, that's a good segue into the watch list, because one of the first names on the watch list that I've put on for this week is Salah. 12.2 million. He's back in training. He featured for 60 minutes today against Atalanta. They do play Brighton, which, if I'm not mistaken, I think historically they happen to do pretty well against Brighton, Liverpool as a team, as a whole. So Salah is back on the watch list. Another one to consider, Richarlison, 5.8 million. Some people are looking to double up, and I will get into Hamez later. But just to preface it, it looks like Hamez is getting the hockey assist now. He's playing a little bit deeper. I don't know if you guys saw this too, but he's practically playing the pass that leads to the assist, and he's not involved in the goals or the assist directly anymore. So that could be a little bit worrying. If you want to double up, though, on Everton, because they still look good, and they proved it this week, even though they were on a losing streak for a while. Richarlison is looking sharp, and he's only 5% owned.
Can I just quickly give credit to Marco for correcting me and calling me out when I said that Richarlison was overrated? Marco, I will give you credit for that. I want to make that known to the world, to the listeners, to the viewers, that you were right, and I humbly concede to your thoughts.
I don't appreciate that.
Oh,
no, I do. Because Marco, I rarely hear it. So
I feel like he's just prefacing a setup.
With that being said, I'm still scrolling looking for you, by the way. I'm still scrolling looking for you.
Bro, you're gonna spit all night, bro. Just
name, though,
I'll tell you where I'm at.
I'll keep going all the way to the bottom really quick, just so that we can get through these names. Dallas, even though I had Dallas personally and I took him out from my team, I did put him right back onto the watch list. 4.5 million. He's versatile, and the only reason I put him back on is, even though Leeds doesn't look like they pretty much are shored up in the defense for getting clean sheets. Yes, they did tie 0-0 this past weekend, but Alioski has been slotting into that fullback role, which allows Dallas to move forward. And if Dallas is playing out of position, registered as a defender, that is always something that we want to see in fantasy. So he is relatively cheap at 4.5. He is not going to give you the assured clean sheets, which again is something that I would recommend being the basis for your defensive picks. Picking players that will offer you the opportunity of getting a clean sheet. But I digress. I'll move forward to Alex Telles, 5.5 million. He just got his first full 90 for United, got his first clean sheet. The only reason I'm putting him on this list is because Shaw being out is a big factor, and that kind of nails him on the team sheet, because they're not going to put Brendan Williams on there all of a sudden. And I think leaving Telles on for maybe the next 3 or 4 weeks when United have decently favorable fixtures, I think that could be a good shout, especially as an attacking option. But again, that's just a name on the watch list, someone to keep your eye on. Maybe give it a week or two just to see how he's doing, and then consider picking him up if that's someone that you fancy. The last one on the watch list, Pablo Fornals from West Ham, 6.5 million, only 2.1% owned, so a huge differential. His last 3 game weeks have been 10, 3, and 6-point returns, respectively. So I think that's pretty decent for someone who's going very much under the radar. And Antonio's been out, and Haller has been picking up the slack. A lot of people don't put much faith in Haller, though, so Fornals might be a good shout. One thing I do want to change, and maybe we'll see if we can make this recurring. It's all up to me keeping my information up to date, but 2 names that we had on the watch list last week, they actually returned. So Walcott got his goal for Southampton. I know we were talking about that. That was pretty impressive, honestly. His first goal since 2006, so it's a bit unreliable that it's taken him this long to score again for Southampton, so I don't recommend that. But he did return. And Diogo Jota showing the people that rode his price rise and that jumped on the Jota bandwagon early, he rewarded his loyal managers with a solid points return. Who have we dropped from the watch list? Really quickly, Saka. Bukayo Saka, unfortunately, as a sub, he got subbed off. It looks like it's going to be injuries galore for Bukayo. I'm not sure how long he's going to be out exactly. That hasn't been confirmed yet. And so we're waiting on that. He's dropped because he looked pretty good going forward as far as being involved in the plays. I think Saka was the most involved player in the attack. That's it.
Statistically was.
And I think that's a loss because he was a cheap way to get into an otherwise expensive attacking line for Arsenal. The next name dropped, even though he was dropped last week, I would absolutely not pick him if you were considering it. Even though they have decent fixtures, Harvey Barnes from Leicester City, he has not completed 90 minutes in the last 4 matches, and I think that's a big red flag. He might feature, and I might eat my words next week, but personally, I want someone who's going to be there from 0 to 90, and he's going to be consistent. I think Harvey Barnes is someone to overlook for the next few weeks. And the next 2 names, unfortunately, are COVID positives, and I think we're going to see that going deep into the season. As thankfully the international breaks aren't going to come until March, but Zaha from Crystal Palace, huge down, and Saiz, even though there is backup and it could free up some defensive assets for Wolves if you decide to pick them up, both of them have turned positive COVID tests. Moving into game week 10, notes and questions, looking at the Benchwarmers FC Fantasy League, which we usually do right before the notes and questions. The top 3 has not changed. If I'm not mistaken, I think we actually saw Biden Harris there at the top of the week last week. But it's still in Kepa we trust, Biden Harris 2020, and I Love You Hannah making up the top 3 from our own team. On the bench, Nick is still sitting in 6th pretty comfortably. I've stayed into 8th. Erik made a jump of a few places, coming up all the way up to 9th. He is now in the top 10. Josue made a jump of himself of 2 places. He is now in 12th. Bruno Retrust has slipped. So famously, Gat has dropped a few places, making it a bit easier, that mountain into a bit of a molehill to climb for Marco. Bafana FC, Eddie Ubeda, he is sitting in 16th. And hold on, I have to open a whole other window here to get the rest.
Don't worry, I got you. And 32nd place. I'm kidding. I'm not that far down.
In 23rd. In 23rd with 45 points this week, Marco is sitting comfortably with It Got Messy, Let's Party. Again, putting things into perspective, he's only about 50 points off of his challenger Gat, who he's called out for the week, for the season, sorry. And this week, unfortunately, just wasn't it.
I have a question. Marco, are you going to have a wager with Gat?
You brought it up in our text in our group chat.
I did. You guys
ignored it. I ignored it. Bring it up to the listeners and the viewers. Let me talk to Gat. I feel that it has to be with him that he has to say yes or no. I don't want to say yes here and then be like, nah, bullshit. I think he's gonna. I have a feeling he will say.
Are you open and willing for?
Yeah,
for a wager?
It's like when a title challenger challenges somebody, or if you win a big fight and you want to challenge them for the title.
Yeah,
they call him out.
All right. So it's dumb when you're down to make a bet, but I have confidence in myself to at least get as close as possible, if not beat Gat this season. So I say yes, and I'll ask him if he's willing to do it too. Now,
right.
what is it? What is it going to be? I have no idea. That's something
fine.
that we're going to have
That's
to
fine.
discuss. But I'm willing to do it, even though I am down 50 points.
Yes, that is, and it will make it all the more sweeter when you do take the win for this wager. Moving into the notes and questions, though, a few things I wanted to highlight for you guys and bring you guys in as well. There's a conundrum between who to choose for game week 10, KDB or Vardy or Salah or Bruno. Which one do you want to captain? Which one do you want to lean into? Personally, I'll give you my opinion. I am leaning towards Vardy. That is a transfer that I'm eyeing up right now. I think they have some pretty good matchups, especially with Fulham and Sheffield coming up in their next two. I think the idea here is to plan with the fixtures and then try your best to stick to form. What I mean by that is, let's say a few weeks ago, I saw that Leicester City had a good run. And so I'll say, okay, I want to have Vardy in for game week 10 and 11. And then let's say we get to this time, which would be now. If Vardy was doing horribly, then I would try to avoid that and move towards someone who is in form, namely Bruno, namely Salah. Someone who's out of form, even though they have good fixtures, on the opposite hand, is KDB. KDB has not been featuring for this Manchester City side. He's been misfiring a bit. I think, honestly, the problem isn't KDB. I think it's the forwards. I think it's the forward line in front of him. I don't feel like they're responding well as far as putting in goals. They've scored 10 goals in 8 matches. We're used to them scoring 10 goals in 2. And I think that's a very big issue fantasy-wise. Of course, this is all just fantasy-wise and looking at the points. Another name that I think, and I mentioned this earlier, giving credit to Josue, because I'm sure he'll hear this and he'll be like, oh, why don't you say... I had a question last week where I was like, I don't know if I should keep Son or not because I was on wildcard. And I brought it up to Josue. And I was like, you know what? Maybe a Spurs fan would know. He'll be biased, but he'll know. And he said, no, man, keep Son. You'll see he's going to show up. And rightly, he did. So he scored. He has 9 goals in his last 9 matches. That's averaging every 80 minutes or so. He's getting a goal, which is huge for a midfielder like that. And I think comparing that to KDB, who's having a total dry run, it just shows that you can plan ahead for the fixtures, but you should stick to the form. So in my case, I do have both. But if I were to maybe do things over, I would definitely prioritize having Son and maybe using the funds from KDB for someone else. How does it look like for Manchester City defenders? I think that maybe using people like players like Diaz or Cancelo would be good. Like I said, Sterling, KDB, Jesus, Bernardo Silva has been looking awful as far as fantasy goes with his points return. Again, form over fixtures. A good shout, I will say, for defenders, since we're on the topic, Robertson. I don't know if you guys have Robertson on your teams, but he definitely showed that he can still be involved, even though it's looking like they might not get clean sheets. And the good thing is that Liverpool have a nice run of fixtures where the clean sheets are imminent. So if you chase that, it looks like the clean sheet points are going to come again. And like Heung-min Son, he might be a player that could stay for the entirety of the season. This last point I want to dig into a little bit because we mentioned it earlier in the episode about Hamez. Hamez hasn't been looking very good. And he has 2 good matches coming up, but overall he's blanked in 6 of his last 8 matches, meaning he hasn't gotten an assist or a goal return. That's very, very average for a player that's taking up a slot in your midfield that could be used for someone else. What would you want to do? I would say if you can save the transfer and you don't have any other problems in your team, maybe sit on it. But it could be the point where we might have to ditch Hamez because honestly, if he's just getting 2-pointers, 3-pointers, and there's people like Bruno, like Son, like Grealish who are putting in double digits, you want to have that on your team instead. So some replacements, again, just suggestions that I would be looking at if I were to give up Hamez. If I had the transfer, I don't right now, so I'm not considering it just yet. But players like Jota, Ziyech, or Grealish are perfect replacements that are within the price range of Hamez if you want to try to do that. So guys, what are your questions for Game Week 10? What are you looking at before we get into captaincy choices?
I'll go real quick, man, because I'm doing it as we're speaking right now. I'm trying to figure out what I'm gonna do. I am playing my wild card.
Ooh.
I'm gonna do it this week.
Okay.
I'm gonna completely shuffle around my midfield. I'm gonna drop a Aubameyang, obviously. Drop Zaha because he has COVID-19, and I'm picking up Salah. I had him before I dropped him because of the whole COVID-19 situation. Picking up Grealish, picking up Son. I'm thinking of dropping Bruno, keeping Jota, because by dropping Bruno, I'm able to bring in Vardy in the attacking front. Now I just got to fill up that midfield spot with 6.8 points. My defense, I feel like it's pretty solid right now. It's been getting me consistent points, but I'm just stuck on that midfield option right now. I don't know if I want to drop Bruno and bring in Son, or don't bring in Son and bring in Bruno. I don't know. I'm torn right now. I'm really torn.
Question, guys,
I mean,
is I haven't heard anybody mention Chelsea players. Any reason why you guys are sleeping on them?
I have Chilwell.
Yeah, Chilwell. I think Chilwell is a good shout, and that's a good point, Edgar. Actually, because Chilwell, even though they face a pretty, they have I would say their next fixture against Spurs could be a tough one, but I wouldn't rule them out. I think we actually touched on this a little bit earlier. The inconsistency of their attack is what kind of has me off of Chelsea attackers right now, because they're just not showing the consistency of being there like Son and Kane have for this season. Like comparing like that's the benchmark. And comparing it to that, they just haven't been showing up. And we saw how inefficient Werner was still in front of goal. And do you really want to spend almost 9.5 million for a player when for just 0.5 more you can get Vardy, who has a great lineup coming up for fixtures? I think that's the only reason why. Still, if you want to take a wager on Ziyech, that's probably the only other Chelsea player that I would probably go for myself. I do have Chilwell too, so I think that's to what Erik is saying about having a solid defense. I think it looks pretty good. Chilwell, Walker-Peters, Tierney. I think that's a solid back line. Mitchell, he's cheap. You can't really get much cheaper than that. And then I see that you have also Vinegar here. So you do have two placeholders as far as like really cheap.
So I swapped. I'm swapping Vinegar for Masuaku.
Right. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good pickup.
Points there. I'm just really stuck on that midfield spot. I don't know if I want to. I don't know who to bring in. I don't know if I want to bring in. I think I'm gonna bring in Son just because he's firing on all cylinders, man. It's so hard not to pick him.
Another question. I mean, you guys are all mid-table or bottom of the table. What's the number one on the table doing?
Marco, why are you laughing?
Because he said mid-table to bottom table. So, I mean, you guys aren't up there, so I could laugh. If you were first place, if you dim me the top three, I'm like, oh shit.
Actually, mid-table is where you are. So
if you're not first, you're last. Eric's fine.
Touche.
It looks like, honestly, the premiums of like Robertson. A lot of the managers, like, not to dissect their teams, so they don't feel like we're intruding in some way, even though it is publicly available. The recurring theme on some of the top teams for the Benchwarmers Fantasy League is showing their loyalty or their trust on the premiums. So a lot of those managers have Kane, even though he only scored 4 points. A lot of those managers have Robertson, even though he blanked prior to game week 9. And I think that is a big key for having the consistent, 60, 70 plus game weeks, that just putting two of those together, your rank can jump up by a lot. Listen, Erik, just so that we don't delve into it too much and go over time, I think that foregoing Bruno, personally, like, I would be scared of that. But if you want to fill, I think if you want to fill that midfield slot with maybe another burner and make sure that you play like a 4-3-3, something like that, you have the funds to make the switch next week if need be. I think that's something that you could possibly, I think you could consider that. Again, if you play your wild card now, you can jump on the price rises for the rest of the week up until Friday, honestly, these next 2 days. And then you can solidify your selection by Friday morning early. Because again, reminder, that's also very important before we end the episode. The deadline for this week is Friday. There is an early match in the week, Crystal Palace versus Newcastle, kickoff at 3 p.m. Eastern. So the deadline will be at 1:30 p.m., approximately 90 minutes before kickoff. I think that really wraps up this episode. I want to end it with the captain choices. I think I made it pretty clear on looking at Vardy as the best captain choice on paper because it's the best fixture for a possible return. Fulham have been looking very leaky as far as their defense. What are the alternatives? I think Bruno or Salah are very solid alternatives if you have them on your team. I don't think you can go wrong, honestly. Bruno has shown statistically, for fantasy at least, that a lot of his double-digit returns, the majority of them have come on away fixtures. This is an away fixture to Southampton. Again, also, Salah has historically shown that Brighton are whipping boys when it comes to playing Liverpool. So he could also feature. And him coming off early for the Champions League match this week, I think that could show a bit of intent by Klopp to save him for this weekend and make sure that they're still making up ground, because any points lost, even if it's a draw, that's a big issue for a weakened Liverpool side. A differential, though, if you don't have any of them and you don't have any premiums and you're looking a little bit stuck, I think, honestly, the tried and true Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin has been showing up over the last 9 game weeks, and he's been putting in 2 goals quite often. So I think it's possible in this next match, and I wouldn't count him out just yet. That wraps up our fantasy episode for this week. Edgar, thank you for joining us with your bobbleheads and your representatives. Marco,
You got it.
keep plugging away. Erik, you're in the top 10, so make sure you keep going forward. And as I like to remind everyone, this is a marathon, not a sprint. We'll be back next week with another fantasy episode. Thank you for listening. This is The Bench with a Voice, where the bench is always warm. Peace, everyone.
Peace.